Welcome to Trials, Tribulations and Tea. And this story is about a serial killer and the secrets of Moat House Farm, Essex. On this channel, I will be sharing crimes, disasters and unusual reportage covering the Victorian and Edwardian eras. Viewer discretion is advised, and be aware that some content reflects the attitudes and language of the times. My cuppa today is gunpowder tea, which is made from green tea, dried and rolled into pellets, often used as an addition to other teas, high in caffeine, so best drunk in moderation. Settle down with your favourite brew and join me for a mystery in the past that took many years to solve, and it all started in 1899. If you like this channel, please do subscribe, click on the notifications, and I look forward to entertaining you again soon. This mystery was solved by a pair of shoes. Now to the protagonists of the story. The first being Camille Cecil Holland. Camille was a spinster of 56, although apparently, according to others, she looked much younger. She was neat, well-dressed, and had plenty of hobbies, including painting in watercolours and writing short novels. She had lived with an aunt in London for many years and had become her aunt's sole heir to a fortune of £7,000, worth approximately £800,000 now, which invested in stocks and shares resulted in a considerable income of approximately £400 per year. As with many spinsters of the time, she had no permanent home of her own and lived a simple life, staying in hotels and cheap boarding houses. But she had no debts, paid her bills on time in cash, and generally lived a quiet life. Whilst living in a boarding house in Bayswater, London, she met and entertained in her private drawing room a certain Captain Dougal. It is not known where they originally met, but he showered Camille with attention, taking her out to dinner and the theatre, and Camille became infatuated. After so many years without romance, apart from that which she had published in short novels, she was smitten. Samuel Herbert Dougal was of Irish ancestry, but he had been born in the East End of London, and apparently had had some trouble in his early life and joined the army as an alternative to prison. At 24 he married, taking his wife with him when his regiment was moved to Halifax, Nova Scotia. She died there with suspicious suddenness. He was then allowed a short furlough in England and returned with a second wife only 2 months later. A young, good-looking woman who tended his children and had some money of her own. 9 weeks after arrival, she also was seized with a sudden illness and, like his first wife, died and was buried within 24 hours, the death being due, according to Dougal, to her having eaten poisonous oysters. There can be little doubt that Dougal was a poisoner. The circumstances attending the deaths of his first and second wife and his callous conduct almost prove it. But it seems that the sudden deaths of 2 wives caused no consternation among his fellows, as he went on to introduce a third woman as his wife, going so far as to forge a marriage certificate. Luckily for this lady, the union was a short one, as she found his callousness too much, and she returned to Canada. Scarcely had the Canadian woman left than another girl was installed in his home, only to flee in the middle of the night from his violence. Dougal held a variety of short-lived jobs, with his employment ending abruptly, due no doubt to his volatile nature. But he was well known for his penmanship and was an adept forger. During his time in the army, he served 12 months imprisonment with hard labour, for forging a cheque in the name of Lord Wolseley, Commander-in-Chief of the forces in Ireland. This talent would be his undoing in the future. As Dougal continued his wooing of Camille, he did admit to being married, but by now Camille was so under his spell, she agreed to buy a home for them and to live as husband and wife. Eventually a suitable property was found. This was Coldham Farm in the parish of Clavering in Essex. Despite Dougal's entreaties, Camille insisted the property was purchased in her name, and the purchase price of $1,550 was duly paid, Camille having sold some stock to fund it. The house, although smallish, was surrounded by a moat, and Camille renamed it Moat House Farm. They moved in April 1899. And this is a picture of the original Moat House Farm. At first all seemed well in the home, with Camille furnishing it and Dougal running the farm. But nature will out, and he soon took an inordinate interest in a serving girl, Florence Havies. On the very first day of her arrival, Dougal forced himself upon her in the kitchen and kissed her. She immediately complained to her mistress, and when confronted, Dougal exclaimed, "She's only a kid," he smiled. "You surely don't think I was serious." But he then tried to force his way into the girl's bedroom, which led to a screaming servant girl, who, once calmed, slept in Camille's bedroom all night. Florrie was determined to leave and contacted her parents to come and collect her a day or so later. Camille, realizing she had been duped by this man, was distraught and vowed he should be made to leave. A strong will seems to have been part of her character, but she allowed Dougal to stay in the house until he could find suitable lodgings. Bad mistake. Camille could not drive, and Dougal offered to take her shopping on Friday the 19th of May. As she departed, Camille called out to Florrie, "Goodbye, Florrie, I shall not be long." But as you've no doubt guessed, Dougal returned alone to the farm at 8:30 p.m, telling Florrie that Camille had gone to London by train for a visit. There were no trains to London that evening, but Florrie was not to know this. When she retired to bed, she barricaded her door and spent the whole night fearful. In the morning, Dougal announced early, "I have just had a letter from Mrs. Dougal," he said. Another lie, as in fact the post was not delivered until 8 o'clock. "She says she's going away for a short holiday, and she will send another lady down." Florrie's mother came to collect her that day, and they left as quickly as they could. Then indeed, the same day, another lady did arrive. This time it was the real Mrs. Dougal, the third. He must have written on the morning following the disappearance of Camille, telling her to come. In the next 4 years, the Moat farm saw many mistresses. The real Mrs. Dougal came and went. New and attractive servants arrived and became victims to the man's unscrupulous desires. And amongst these were 2 sisters, one of whom became the mother of his child. In all this time, nothing was heard of Camille. But only 10 days after her disappearance, the Piccadilly branch of the National and Provincial Bank received a letter written in the third person asking for a chequebook. One was sent, addressed to Miss Camille Holland, the Moat House, and on June the 6th, a letter was received by the bank enclosing a £25 cheque and asking for payment in £5 notes. The bank sent the money on in the usual way, but the manager, noticing some slight discrepancy in the signature, asked that this demand could be confirmed. In reply came a letter. "The cheque for £25 to Dougal is quite correct. Owing to a sprained hand, there may have been some discrepancies in some of my cheques lately signed." Nor did Dougal stop short at forging cheques. Whole letters in her handwriting were sent to the brokers and bankers, the writing so cleverly done that both the banker and the broker concerned were satisfied that they were genuine. In all, Dougal managed to secure nearly £6,000. Dougal's path to riches was not an easy one at times. He had to face court proceedings brought by Kate Cramwell, the servant, with regard to her child. And in the early part of 1902, one of Dougal's victims, who, spurred by jealousy and a desire to get even with the man, made a statement to the police regarding Miss Holland's disappearance. She could not have known the facts, but intimated that he may have locked Camille up somewhere or been murdered. The police searched the house and, finding nothing, Scotland Yard began searching the farm. Weeks and weeks of searching led nowhere, and the police were on the point of giving up the search when one of the journalists present said to the detective in charge, "Why don't you open one of those trenches that Dougal filled up?" A labourer was sent for, and it wasn't long before a body was unearthed. The problem came in how to identify the skeletonized remains. The skull had a bullet hole and remnants of a dress were present, and although a seamstress who made Camille's clothing recognised some trim, that alone was not enough to identify her. The breakthrough came once her shoes had been unearthed. Camille had very small and dainty feet, of which she was very proud, a UK size 2. The witness who would eventually see Dougal hang was a Mr. Mould, shoemaker of Edgware Road. Once shown the shoes, the M in brass tacks found in the dead woman's heel was undoubtedly Mould's work, and he only had one customer who wore shoes of this kind, and that customer was Camille Holland. The trial began in the spring of 1903, and based on all the evidence, Samuel was convicted of Camille's murder. He was hanged at Chelmsford Prison on the 14th of July, 1903. Camille was buried in Saffron Walden Cemetery. It is sad to think that so many women suffered at the hands of this brute, and if it hadn't been for the shoes surviving in the ground for years, he may have got away with it. If you have enjoyed this true life tale, do subscribe, hit the notification button, and I'll be back with more true life stories soon. Thank you.